Howdy folks, today's lore episode is on the Gamorreans. Standing about 1.7 meters tall, Gamorreans were bipedal, massively strong, and typically unintelligent pig-like creatures. Few travellers who encountered the species had anything good to say about them, which was probably because, with only very few exceptions, Gamorreans were employed as hired muscles of the hit first, never even consider a question later variety. Male Gamorreans, known as boars, were especially suited to such work, as they were raised to fight and not much else. Indeed, Gamorrean society was based almost exclusively around fighting. The seasons were organised around preparing to fight, fighting, recovering from fighting, and creating new generations of boars to continue fighting. Now despite this, Gamorrean society was matriarchal. Clans of various sizes dotted the surface of Gamor, each ruled by a massive sow called the clan matron, or head sow. Her husband, the largest, most powerful boar of the clan, was called the warlord general, but the matrons dealt with the day-to-day running of the clanhold. Warlord generals were usually selected by the matron for their skills at arms, and they led their clanhold's warriors. Lesser warlords acted as captains, and after the warlords, the married clan boars were the next in rank, as the income they had from their matron wives allowed them better armour and weapons. Household boars, or tuskers, were the next rank down, and made up the majority of the clanhold armies. The clan often hired tuskers, but most showed little consistent loyalty and were prone to wandering. Existing almost outside the normal ranking system were the veterans. They were survivors of many fights and were respected and valued by the entire clan. It was the role of the veterans to train the clan armies. Our rank could easily be determined by the number of blood-sucking parasites, called morts, seen on an individual's thick hide. Although Gamorreans looked on them as pets, morts were actually quite debilitating to less physically strong species. Hence, the more morts, the stronger and more respected the Gamorrean. Gamorrean clans existed in a state of perpetual war, with the female matrons determining when the males went to war and with whom. The clans did, however, trade with each other and with off-world traders, and often bartered gold and precious stones in return for weapons and foodstuffs. Combat challenges between individuals were expected and often encouraged. Special tournaments were arranged around fairs in the late spring, which was slush time, and early autumn, crop time. Few were fought to the death, the majority simply halting at first blood. One notable exception was when a boar challenged the husband of a matron. Gamorreans were only capable of speaking their own language, they could not pronounce any other. They had a rudimentary written language which was used mainly in trading, but also to record a clanhold's genealogy traced through the female lines. It was also used to preserve the Gamorrean stories and, bizarrely, their love poetry. Gamorreans usually frowned upon displays of intelligence, viewing such acts as a sign of ill breeding. Despite this, during winter, cold time, boars courted sows by writing, or more usually, paying someone else to write poems of love and devotion. Many in off-world made a reasonable living on Gamor by producing blunt love poetry on behalf of courting boars. Gamorrean religion was quite simple. Gamorreans believed that certain places and objects had a spirit, and especially good axe, the sites of a glorious battle, an odd tree, all had a spirit presence. Spirits of mighty ancestors were revered and were believed to advise the matrons and warlords. And it was also believed that the site of a murder was haunted by the vengeful and powerful ghost of the victim, and such sites were avoided at all costs. The act of murder was precisely defined and intensely censored under the Gamorreans' very exact code of honour. Although it was considered acceptable to walk up to a boar, announce a challenge and kill him in an honest test of strength at arms, to trick someone, come up behind them or ambush and then kill them was defined as murder, and murderers were usually banished and could expect little welcome from another clan. Now, when the first off-world traders actually landed on Gamor, 5 Gamorrean clans fought for the right to approach the vessel. When one clan won after 2 days of battle, the victorious Gamorreans approached the trading vessel and proceeded to smash it into pieces. 6 further trading expeditions suffered the same fate before a heavily armed vessel arrived on Gamor with a new purpose: to take the Gamorreans off-world as slaves. Now, after this initial contact, several species throughout the galaxy found more, usually violent, uses for the brutal Gamorreans. Because of their physical characteristics and limited intelligence, Gamorreans were usually employed as mercenary fighters, guards, bounty hunters, or heavy labourers. Gamorreans would usually work for anyone if the price was right and the nature of the work was agreeable to them. They would even agree to slavery if the terms were satisfactory. A typical drawback for some employers in hiring Gamorreans was their contractual requirements. They did not consider a contract binding if it was not sealed in blood through combat, as a Gamorrean warlord would traditionally force a recruit to fight to prove their ability. Gamorreans expected a prospective employer to do the same. From their perspective, if an off-worlder could not defeat those that they hired, they were then not worth working for. Though prized as mercenaries, Gamorreans' strong clan allegiance and hatred for rival clans made it difficult to hire groups of Gamorreans without first looking into their clan backgrounds. Now, back during the Jedi Civil War, Gamorreans sometimes took innocent beings as prisoners, even keeping them as slaves. And by the time of the new Sith Wars, Gamorrean warriors often fought alongside the Sith, participating in many raids and almost as many massacres. And due to these actions, Gamorreans were considered cruel and savage monsters, and this reputation survived well into the age of the Galactic Empire. Now, the Gamorreans who were selected to act as palace guards for Jabba the Hutt were all proud Tuskers, each one in the prime of Gamorrean brotherhood. Gathered from a number of clans across Gamorre, Jabba originally selected 12 guards. They had to be tough enough to hold in check some of the deadliest criminals in the galaxy, maintaining a semblance of order in the crime lord's court. And at their initiation into the Desiligic Hutt clan, the guards stood in the middle of the courtroom facing their prospective employer, assailed on all sides by taunts and jeers from the crowd of sycophants and hangers-on who usually surrounded the Hutt leader. And Jabba then proposed a final test. In keeping with Gamorrean tradition, the guards would engage their master in single combat to prove their worth. However, in keeping with Hutt tradition, so Jabba said, all of the participants must be blindfolded. Now, suspecting nothing, the Gamorreans agreed, but once the blindfolds were on, the courtroom crowd descended on them, beating them mercilessly. At the end of the ritual, the surviving 9 Gamorreans agreed that their master was indeed a mighty warrior. It had been the best beating they had ever had, and they were impressed. Now, one of the survivors, Ortug, was made leader of the guards, and Ortug delighted in persecuting Gartog, another of the guards, who was stupid even by the standards of his species. Now, the highest honour among Jabba's guards was to accompany the Hutt on his pleasure barge, but Gartog never earned this honour. He was forced to stay at the palace on the day of Jabba's death at the Great Pit of Carkoon, so Gartog became the only surviving member of the original 12 Gamorreans. So in this case, his severe stupidity actually saved his life. And that is the Gamorreans. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you liked the video. Let me know what you thought of the video as well. Subscribe to stay up to date with my videos, and I will talk to you all in the next one. Later.